All right, so today we are going to do a really quick mini lesson on the theme of exclusion. And if you're watching this video and going through the presentation, hopefully it's because you're doing the WebQuest for the Roots of Knowledge lesson. Okay, so first off, I want to remind you guys that you need to be filling out your guided notes as you go through this presentation so that you can get everything filled out correctly, because you will need the information that we go through in this video to be able to answer the quiz questions correctly and to be prepared for the project that you have to do at the end of the lesson. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so first things first, what does it mean to be excluded? To be excluded means to be left out of something. For example, perhaps an event or a group, or for example, when I was a little kid, I remember getting in trouble for excluding my little brother when I would try to keep him from playing with me and my sisters. But no worries, I'm a lot nicer now that I'm grown up. And so, for the purpose of this lesson, we will be learning about exclusion from what is called the body politic. So, what is the body politic? The body politic is defined as the people of a nation, state, or society considered collectively as an organized group of citizens. That's kind of a lot to take in, so we're going to break it down so that we can understand this concept of the body politic better. Okay, so taking the first part of that definition, the people of a nation, state, or society. Another way that we could word that is that it's people in a specific area or group, maybe a country, a state, or a government, or some kind of organization. And then the second part of the definition we have that these people are considered collectively as an organized group of citizens. Another way we can say this is that the people are organized to make up a unit as a whole, the unit being, in this case, the country, the state, or government that we talked about up here. So if you put that together, another way that we can define the body politic is that the body politic is composed of people in a specific area or group that are organized to make up the unit as a whole. Okay, so now that we've kind of defined what the body politic is, we're going to talk about why a person or a group of people would be excluded. And unfortunately, there are many reasons why a person or group of people might be excluded. But some of these reasons might include, but aren't limited to, religion, race, culture, gender, and economic status. So next we have, how are people excluded? So for the purpose of this lesson, we're just going to focus on 3 ways that people or groups of people can be excluded. They can be excluded politically, socially, and economically. So to be excluded politically means that legally they are not considered part of the whole, meaning that there are laws preventing them from being part of the whole. To be excluded socially means that they are excluded by society, the people within society, and not by the law. To be excluded economically means that due to their low economic status, they're not able to fully participate in the body politic. And low economic status just means people who are living in poverty. Okay, so how do people respond to exclusion? And there's not really a single way that people or groups have responded to being excluded. But some responses that have been seen throughout history include peaceful protests, civil disobedience, which is basically refusing to obey laws as a form of peaceful political protest, social movements, people breaking away to form their own communities, violence, and revolutions. So what usually happens in these responses is that people or groups of people usually start out by responding in peaceful ways, such as peaceful protests or civil disobedience, forming their own communities, social movements. But if they're not seeing the change that they're hoping to see, then oftentimes the response will move from peaceful to violent, and you'll end up with things like revolutions and wars to try to get change. Okay, so let's look at some examples of groups of people from U.S. history that have been excluded from the body politic. So here we have the American Revolution, which took place between 1775 and 1783. The group of people that were being excluded is the colonists, the American colonists, and they were being excluded politically and socially. They were being excluded politically because by law they did not have the right to have representatives from the colonies physically present in Parliament. And if you think back to what you know about the American Revolution, one of the big things that you learn about is the saying no taxation without representation. And so clearly it was an issue for these guys that they were being politically excluded. They were also being socially excluded because the citizens that lived in Great Britain believed that they were better than the British citizens that were living in the colonies. And so they were excluded in some ways from the body politic because they were seen as lesser citizens than the people who actually lived in Great Britain. So the response to the American Revolution evolved over time. It started with protests and demonstrations, things like the Boston Tea Party. But when that didn't lead to the change that they were hoping to see, the colonists declared independence and engaged in war, and we had the American Revolution. Another great example of a group of people that were excluded from the body politic and responded was the Civil Rights Movement. And this took place from 1954 to 1968. And the group of people that were being excluded were African Americans. And they were being excluded politically, socially, and economically. So they were being excluded in all the ways that we were talking about. Politically, they were being excluded because segregation was supported by law, by the court decision of separate but equal. Socially, they were being excluded because even if there weren't laws preventing them from fully participating in the body politic, other members of society used fear and violence to keep them from participating. And economically, they were excluded because due to political and social exclusion, many African Americans lived in poverty. And because of that poverty, they weren't able to fully participate in the body politic. So the response that the African Americans had and the people who were supporting them were peaceful protests and civil disobedience. Like we said earlier, civil disobedience is refusing to obey laws as a form of peaceful political protest. So, for example, going into an establishment that only served white people, but disobeying that law and going there and trying to demand service was civil disobedience. Okay, so quick lesson. Let's review what we went over. Make sure you guys have everything that you need to in your guided notes. You have all the questions answered. Real quick, I'm going to go through the things that we talked about. Make sure you got everything down that you need to. So we talked about what it means to be excluded. We defined the body politic. If I were you, I would write the definition of both the official definition and the definition that we came up with. We talked about why people are excluded, how people respond to exclusion, and then we have the two examples of the American Revolution and the Civil Rights Act. So keep this information in mind and the examples in mind as you finish the lesson. Thanks, guys.